Welcome to the second part of our series on Jonah. Last week, Jonah ran away from God. Let us see what happens this week when Jonah does something he knows he shouldn't. Listen carefully to see how the sailors on Jonah's boat to Tarshish react, and also how Jonah reacts when everything goes horribly wrong. When we left Jonah last week, he had just got on a boat to Tarshish. Then the Lord hurled a powerful wind over the sea, causing a violent storm that threatened to break the ship apart. Fearing for their lives, the desperate sailors shouted to their gods for help and threw the cargo overboard to lighten the ship. But all this time, Jonah was sound asleep down in the hold. He wasn't praying to God or asking for help. Instead, he had given up and was trying to hide from all the trouble. So the captain went down after him. "How can you sleep at a time like this?" he shouted. "Get up and pray to your God. Maybe he will pay attention to us and spare our lives." The sailors are asking their gods for help, praying and trying to save everyone on board. Jonah has turned away from the Lord here, tried to hide, and has made life more difficult for the people around him. Then the crew cast lots to see which of them had offended the gods and caused the terrible storm. God told them the truth. It was Jonah's fault. "Why has this awful storm come down on us, Jonah?" the sailors demanded. "Who are you? What is your line of work? What country are you from? What is your nationality?" Jonah answered, "I am a Hebrew, and I worship the Lord, the God of heaven, who made the sea and the land." The sailors were terrified when they heard this, for he had already told them he was running away from the Lord. They knew Jonah's God must be really powerful to be able to make storms on the sea. "Oh, why did you do it?" they groaned. And since the storm was getting worse all the time, they asked him, "What should we do to you to stop this storm?" "Throw me into the sea," Jonah said, "and it will become calm again. I know that this terrible storm is my fault." Instead, the sailors rowed even harder to get the ship to land. They wanted to be kind and not hurt Jonah. But the stormy sea was too violent for them, and they couldn't make it. Then they cried out to the Lord, Jonah's God. "Oh Lord," they pleaded, "don't make us die for this man's sin, and don't hold us responsible for his death. Oh Lord, you have sent this storm upon him for your own good reasons." The sailors have seen the power of Jonah's God, our God, over the storm and over Jonah's life, and have decided to trust God's goodness and mercy, even though they don't worship him. They're still praying for help, even though they're scared and could have easily given up by now. Then the sailors picked Jonah up and threw him into the raging sea, and the storm stopped at once. The sailors were awestruck by the Lord's great power, and they offered him a sacrifice and vowed to serve him. The sailors had become worshippers of the Lord. They realized that he is the only God, as they saw his amazing power, and they worshipped and praised him for saving their lives. When we do something that we know we shouldn't, life often becomes more difficult. Like if we lie to someone and they find out, they might find it hard to trust us again, making it harder to be friends. Sometimes, God allows life to be more difficult to help us become better people. Not all difficulties are from God like this, but some are. This part of Jonah's story teaches us that when life does become difficult, even when it's not our fault, God wants us to run to him, pray to him, and ask for help. God brought the storm, but he also saved the sailors, even though they weren't believers in him at the beginning. God listened to their prayers, talked to them, and helped them. That's what the Bible calls mercy, when we forgive someone or help them when they don't deserve it. I think we can all be like Jonah in this story sometimes. We might say we're a Christian, but not be totally sure we actually trust Jesus and not really want to follow or worship him. That's okay. What we need to know, though, like the sailors learned, is that we can trust God. He will help us get through the difficult times because of his mercy, when he helps us and forgives us, even though we mess up sometimes. Is there anything you need help with today? Chat to God about it. He loves it when we chat to him, and he always wants to help us. Why don't you join us next week to find out what happens to Jonah next, and how God saves him, in a way that he could never have expected.